Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Oldish TV. As always, I am your host, Karen. And since the last time we got together, I've had a birthday. Another year older, another year under the bridge, another trip around the sun, however you want to phrase it. I'm a little older. So today I wanted to talk to you about age, and in particular, really old age. I dug up some information on a study that I've been following for a while, and it's called the 90 plus study. Some of you may have heard of it, but it is endlessly fascinating to me. Every time I read about it, there's more information and more information. So this study was begun in 2003, long time ago. And the epidemiologist who has been primarily involved in this keeps getting new grant money to study different facets of this age group. Now, the original study participants were kind of a captive audience. They had 14,000 surveys. That's a really good cohort. 14,000 of them from a very large retirement community in Orange County, California. It was called Leisure World. Now, some of the residents objected to that name because their opinion is they do anything other than sit around, as the name would suggest. In fact, the nickname the place had been given is Seizure World. They didn't like that. So they changed it. I believe it's now called Laguna Woods. But regardless, 14,000 surveys were gathered from this group of people. The mean age of the study participants was 74, with an age range of 40 to 101. Great group of people, right? There were nearly twice as many women as there were men, and the age at death ranged from 59 to 109, with the mean age of that group being 88. Now, there was a follow-up survey done in 1983, and it was completed by 9,264 residents. So the original 14,000, now 9,264. And there was an additional follow-up done in 1985 that involved 8,502 participants. So you can see it's declining a little bit every time they follow it up. The original 14,000 survey participants were visited every 6 months by researchers who looked at things like diet, activity, medical history, medications, and so on. What they were trying to find out was what let people live to be over the age of 90. What sort of lifestyle is associated with this? Who's diagnosed with dementia and who isn't? Who becomes disabled and who doesn't? Are there any factors in the brains of 90-year-olds? And what risks can be changed through factors like diet, exercise, supplements, and so on? Now, many of these original participants donated their brains to the university following their death so that they could be looked at. So they had a chance to look at these participants before and after death, in many cases. So, what did they find? This is where it gets really fascinating. Because, if you're like me, you read the news that comes out and it says, drink wine. And then the next day, don't drink wine. That's bad for you. Drink coffee. Don't drink coffee. Exercise 30 minutes a day. It doesn't matter how much you exercise. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But this is actual real data that comes from people who are living the dream. So, what did they find out? 1 or 2 glasses of alcohol a day turns out to be a good thing. Those who drank more than 2 glasses a day fared worse than those who drank none. But there is a 10 to 15% reduction in the risk of death for those who drank up to 2 drinks per day. And it doesn't have to be wine, it can be any alcohol. It can be bourbon, gin, a martini, doesn't matter. 1 to 2 drinks a day. Coffee drinkers, this is for you. 1 to 3 cups of coffee turns out to be a good thing and better than drinking more than 3 cups or no coffee at all. Drink that coffee. Here's the thing that made the most difference of everything: social engagement. Be social, participate in activities, engage with those around you, do it every day, and do it a lot. That mattered more than absolutely anything. Now, interestingly, this study was featured on 60 Minutes, and there was a gentleman who said during the interview, "Are you going to ask me about my sex life?" And the interviewer said, "Well, I am now. I wasn't going to because it's not on the survey." It's curious that it's not on the survey, but it wasn't on the survey. This gentleman, though, offered the opinion that a healthy sex life, whatever that means to various people, mattered in terms of your health and longevity. So there you go. But social engagement, it does matter. It turns out that they did a little um, study on exactly how much time you needed to spend being active. Now, activities done in 1981, and remember, this original study was done in 2003. So, for every hour of activity done in 1981, longevity increased and the benefits never leveled off. So, remember that the median age, the mean age was 88 years, sorry, was 74. The mean age of the study participants at that time was 74. So take 22 years off of that. That means that you were either 52 or the oldest participant was 101. So that individual's age would have been 79 for the number of hours spent engaged in activity. People who exercise definitely live longer than people who don't. However, 45 minutes seemed to be the optimum age. There was no benefit in exercising longer than 45 minutes. Here's the interesting thing. You could exercise as little as 15 minutes a day and have it make a difference. And you don't have to exercise all at once. That 45 minutes doesn't have to be all at once, and it doesn't have to be intense. You could go for a walk around the block for 15 minutes. And then later on in the day, you could do a bit of gardening. And then you could walk to the rec center to participate in your social activity. It just needed to be a total of 45 minutes, not intense. So you can relax about that. Vitamins. Turns out they studied vitamin E, A, C, and calcium. None of it made any difference at all. None of it. Now, I will point out in terms of vitamin C, this study group lives in California. So, by the nature of where they live, they are exposed to vitamin C in a way that those of us who live in the Northeast are not. So, you know, take that into consideration. A lot of you are going to love this one. You know how it's a good thing to be normal weight or underweight when you're younger? Turns out when you're older, a little extra weight is a good thing. Yes, I like that one. A little extra weight is a good thing. And those who were in their 70s and a little above normal weight live longer. Eat that pie. So, dementia. That was something they looked at too. And in fact, the second grant uh, money that the epidemiologist received, they studied dementia and brain health and all kinds of those good things. So, over 40% of the 90 plus participants had dementia, while almost 80% are disabled. Both are more common in women than men. Half of those over 90 with dementia don't have the telltale signs that would explain their dementia. Interesting. So, what they look for are, by those of us who are not in the medical world, commonly referred to as plaques and tangles. So, when they looked at the brains that were donated, the plaques and tangles in the brain didn't necessarily mean dementia. Some who had been diagnosed with dementia had plaques and tangles. Some who had not been diagnosed with dementia ever had lots of plaques and tangles. What does that mean? Well, they don't know, but they did find a new protein that is a newly identified cause of dementia. The protein is called TDP43. So T for Tom, D for Don, P for Peter. TDP43. It tends to affect 1 in 5 cases of dementia in the people over 90. It is believed. It was there in the brain. Here's something that really fascinated, I mean, so much about this study fascinated me, but microinfarcts also cause dementia, as does hippocampus sclerosis. Now, the microinfarcts are the thing that are really interesting. They are tiny, silent strokes that disconnect the cortex from the rest of the brain. And they act like dementia in a clinical sense, but they're not. One person's brain that I saw discussed was a man who had been diagnosed with dementia, but he had no plaques and tangles in his brain at all. It was the cleanest looking slide you could ever want to see. However, he had a lot of microinfarcts, essentially spaces where brain tissue was missing. Some, it is believed, have protection from dementia. It's called resilience, and it could be a gene or multiple gene or a combination of genes. They don't know. But there are people who had plaques and tangles and microinfarcts, all kinds of things, but no dementia. Their brains were good to go right up until the day they died. Right now, there are 2 ways to diagnose dementia. One is a PET scan. So you can do that if you have the money. It is in the US a cost of $4,000 to $5,000. There is a new test. Now, we just put an article about this on theoldish.com this morning, and it is called PrecivityAD. So you can go to theoldish.com, which is scrolling above my head, and you can find that article, PrecivityAD. It's a blood test. So what that means is you go to your doctor's office and they order a blood draw, and then it gets sent in and the results come back to you. Now, it is good for diagnosing only Alzheimer's, hence the AD at the end of the name. Alzheimer's is one form of dementia. There are many forms of dementia, so don't get fooled. Just because you take this test and are not diagnosed with Alzheimer's does not mean you will not contract another form of dementia. So just be aware of that. PrecivityAD is now available in the US. It costs about $1,250. It is also available in Europe. So our European viewers, you know that. High blood pressure. It's a dangerous thing when a person is younger. Turns out to be not necessarily a bad thing when a person is older. Don't know. Can't explain it. Higher blood pressure is associated with longevity when it is found in people who are older. Why is it increasingly important to understand the oldest old? So that is the 90 plus category. Well, I'll tell you, because the number of oldest old, so over 90-year-olds, is going to triple in the next 30 years. Triple. So science has figured out how to keep us living longer. Not necessarily better. I would happily live to be over 90 as long as my faculties were intact. Happily. Half of the children born today in the US and Europe will live to be 103 or 104. Can you even wrap your mind around that? If you have a child born today, half of those children have the ability to live to 103 or 104. Imagine. That is why, in part, it is so essential to understand what's going on with people over the age of 90. So we get a lot of data, a lot, from studying people who are in their 50s and 60s and sometimes even into their 70s. I've talked about the epidemiologist who conducted this 90 plus study. Epidemiology is the branch of medicine that deals with the incidence, distribution, and possible control of diseases and other factors relating to health. So it is epidemiologists who are studying all this good stuff. And you can understand with the differences that I've just told you about between people over the age of 90 with regard to things like blood pressure and weight, that it is not necessarily helpful to apply lessons learned from studying 50 and 60-year-olds. Not at all. 90-year-olds are very different, and they need different data to understand their epidemiology. What's going on with them? What's going on in their body? What's going on with their brain? So, that they are essentially two generations removed from one another. If you think about it, a 50-year-old to a 90-year-old, that's 40 years. That's two generations. A lot of difference. So, what do we learn from this? Eat healthy, but also eat that dessert. No need to skip it. Have a drink or two. Don't worry about the coffee. Drink that coffee if that's what you like to do. Be socially engaged. In a very much earlier show, we talked about social engagement, and it was the number one health risk. It was worse than smoking, not being socially engaged. So be socially engaged, make a point of that, and move your body. Move that body, get your exercise in. As little as 15 minutes a day makes a difference. 45 minutes a day is optimal. More than that doesn't do you any good. Move, be, enjoy your life. Enjoy your life. I know it's very difficult right now as we're in the midst of the pandemic, but the vaccines are available. Just on today's news, if for those of you who are watching it archived, it's going to be going ahead and being delivered in the UK. The US is not that far behind, and Canada is not that far behind that. So, you know, live your life, people. Enjoy it. And you too can live to be over 90. All right, that's it for today. I will see you next week at 12 noon next Wednesday. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of one another. Do remember that it takes a village to age a senior. Bye.